This is a game where I went pawn hunting with my queen early on, grabbed material all over the board, and finished with a clean checkmate. My opponent was Gappyslappy, rated 674, just 5 points above my own rating at the time. A true peer matchup in a 2-minute bullet game. But here's the thing, even though I collected a lot of material, the engine says I was actually worse for most of the middle game. My opponent had real chances to punish me. So how did I end up delivering checkmate? Let's walk through it. We open with pawn to d4, pawn to d5, a classical queen's pawn setup. My opponent develops with bishop to f4, and I bring out my knight to c6, followed by pawn to e3, bishop to f5. Both sides are developing naturally. Knight to f3, knight to f6, and then my opponent retreats the bishop to g3. I play pawn to e6, solidifying my center. Through these first several moves, the position stays roughly balanced, with a very slight edge for my opponent at times. Nothing dramatic. Standard development from both sides in the Zukertort-Chigorin variation. My opponent plays knight to h4, and I respond with bishop to e4, keeping my bishop active. Then knight to d2 comes, and I develop my dark-squared bishop to d6. Now here's where things get interesting. My opponent plays knight takes e4, capturing my bishop. I recapture a knight trade that also removes my bishop. Then bishop takes d6 takes my other bishop, and I recapture with queen takes d6. After all these exchanges, the position is roughly balanced. Both sides have traded pieces, and the board is opening up. And this is where my opponent makes a significant error. Bishop to d3. It looks like a natural developing move, but the engine says this hands me a clear advantage. The evaluation swings sharply in my favor. My opponent has left weaknesses on the queen side, and my queen is about to go to work. I play queen to b4, check, giving check, and my opponent blocks with pawn to c3. But now those pawns are exposed. I capture the b2 pawn with queen takes b2. My opponent castles, with castles kingside, getting the king to safety. But I'm not done collecting. I take the c3 pawn with queen takes c3. Now I'm up 2 pawns, but here's the honest truth. After grabbing that second pawn, the engine says the position has swung back to roughly balanced. My queen is deep in enemy territory, and my opponent has development and piece activity to compensate. My opponent plays rook to c1, and I retreat my queen to a3. The position is around a slight edge for me, but it's not as comfortable as you might think with those extra pawns. Now my opponent plays queen to e1. And this is a significant moment. The evaluation jumps to winning for me. My opponent's queen retreats to a passive square, and the position opens up for my pieces. I seize the opportunity and capture the bishop on d3 with queen takes d3. I'm now up a full bishop plus those pawns, and the engine confirms the position is winning for me. From this point forward, I never lose that advantage. My opponent brings the knight back into play with knight to f3, and I castle, finally getting my king to safety. Then knight to e5 comes, and I capture with knight takes e5, trading off the last pair of knights. My opponent recaptures with pawn takes e5. I reposition my remaining knight with knight to g5, and my opponent plays rook to d1. I move my queen to g6, getting her out of danger. The position remains firmly winning for me throughout this sequence. I have a significant material advantage, and my pieces are well coordinated. My opponent plays rook to c1, and I push pawn to c5, trying to activate my rooks. My opponent captures the pawn with rook takes c5. I play knight to h3 check, giving check, and the king goes to king to h1. I bring my rook into the game with rook to c8. My opponent's rook maneuvers to b5, and I play pawn to b6. The rook retreats to b3. I reposition my knight with knight to g5, and my opponent shuffles the rook to a3. I push pawn to a5, and the rook returns to b3. Through all of this maneuvering, the position stays winning for me. I'm probing for the right moment to break through. I double my rooks on the c-file with rook to c6, and my opponent plays pawn to a4. My other rook joins with rook to c8. My opponent retreats the rook to b1, and I centralize my knight with knight to e4. My opponent plays queen to e2, and I advance the knight to c3, putting pressure on the rook. My opponent's queen goes to a6, and now I strike. Knight takes b1, capturing the rook. The position is winning for me, and I've just won the exchange. My opponent recaptures with rook takes b1, but now a forced mate is on the board. I play rook to c1, check. My rook crashes down to the first rank. My opponent's only option is to take. Rook takes c1. And now my second rook comes in, check again. My opponent has one move, queen to f1, blocking with the queen. And I play rook takes f1, checkmate. Checkmate. My rook captures the queen, and the king has nowhere to go. That's the game. So what can we learn from this game? First, pawn hunting with the queen can be risky. I grabbed 2 pawns and a bishop early on, but the engine actually showed the position was only roughly balanced after I took that second pawn. My queen was overextended. It was my opponent's passive play, especially QE1, that let me consolidate and turn the material into a truly winning position. Second, when you have a material advantage, patience matters. I spent several moves maneuvering, doubling rooks, and waiting for the right moment. And third, always watch the back rank. The final combination was simple but deadly, doubling rooks on an open file and crashing through to deliver checkmate. Keep those lessons in mind the next time you're ahead in material. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this breakdown, consider subscribing to the channel. I share games like this regularly, walking through the real decisions and the real mistakes. Drop a comment if you've ever gone pawn hunting with your queen and lived to tell the tale. I'll see you in the next one.